When gardening on a budget, it's important to consider your gardening priorities because that's going to affect both what you plant in your garden and how you choose to spend your money. Some of the priorities that you may have if you're trying to grow a food garden is maybe you want to can or preserve or store your vegetables for use in the winter. For instance, if you want to can tomatoes or a tomato product, then you want to make sure that you've got enough space for your tomatoes. So if that's your priority, then perhaps half of your garden is tomatoes or a quarter of your garden is tomatoes, and that affects what varieties you choose, and maybe you put them in the best spot for gardening in your particular spot. And then that might mean that you only plant 2 or 3 pepper plants instead of lots of pepper plants, just because you don't have the space to do more. Maybe your garden priority is to supplement your food budget and to have a wide variety of vegetables your family can eat throughout the summer, but not necessarily have extra to store or save for later. A third priority might be if you want to grow things that maybe you can't find in a grocery store easily, or that you wouldn't normally be willing to pay the price in the grocery store for. Some examples would be vegetables like Swiss chard and kale. Often they're $3 for a small bunch in the grocery store, but they grow so well in Kansas that even with a very small space dedicated to them, you'll end up with far more value on that space than trying to buy that same vegetable. Another example would be herbs. Almost any herb is very expensive for a small package in the grocery store. Simple herbs like basil and mint, and also less common herbs like lemongrass. Lemongrass does very well in Kansas's hot summer weather, and the plants grow very large. You can freeze the lemongrass stalks for later, and lemongrass is either difficult to find in grocery stores or quite expensive. A fourth priority may simply be that you're gardening for the enjoyment or the exercise. And if you're gardening for that reason, then what you're growing in the garden may be less important than if it's something you enjoy growing. If you have multiple priorities or considerations when you're planning your garden, especially if you're in limited space, it really is important to knuckle down and find the number one priority and use that to plan the core of your garden. Here in my community garden plot, we've kind of made that decision in that we knew we wanted enough tomatoes to make some sauce or salsa to preserve for later, and also have cucumbers for pickling. So the core of our garden are those tomatoes and those cucumbers. But then we also really like to cook and like to try some things that maybe you can't find in a grocery store. And then just something fun, we have some pepper plants that they're not gonna produce tons and tons of peppers, but we've got different varieties and we really enjoy seeing all the different colors and varieties of peppers. So we've kind of wrapped a little bit of all of those priorities into our garden, but use those priorities to determine which vegetables take up the most space.
For more information, visit your local extension office or visit our website at kansasgreenyards.org.